time. It's time for And the Gavel Will Rock.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
In this rebel courtroom, the best in hard rock and metal will stand trial. And the Gavel Will Rock starts now. Here are your hosts, Jason Voorhees and Aaron Savage.
Oh, yeah!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of And the Gavel Will Rock, where we're going to debate all things hard rock and heavy metal in a courtroom battle to decide who rules. And today we have a very special debate. We're going to debate Ozzy Osbourne's solo debut album, Blizzard of Oz, versus Van Halen's self-titled debut album, Van Halen. And we have a very special guest joining us. Please welcome to the show, excellent guitar player, great young man, plays in the best Van Halen tribute band, Van Halen Nation, along with the best Ozzy Osbourne tribute band, Land of Oz. Please welcome Matt Stanley to the show.
How's everyone doing?
What's going on, Matt?
Hanging out.
Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
So why don't we jump it off, Matt? I mean, why don't we start with you, man? I mean, why don't you tell us what these two records mean to you?
All right, so obviously, like when I first started playing guitar, I started when I was younger. I was like maybe like 13 or 14. I got into guitar because of Randy Rhoads first. So actually the first song I heard was Over the Mountain, and I heard it on the radio, and I had gone home and I just started researching Randy Rhoads, and the ball just started rolling, and I just started learning everything I could in his whole catalog because there was only 2 albums. And I'll never forget, like, hearing Blizzard of Oz the first time. Like, I didn't know that Randy Rhoads. I always thought that Zakk Wylde was a guitar player on Crazy Train, and that was like their biggest song. When I found out,
why don't you tell the audience, how old are you, Matt? How old are you?
I'm 22 now.
Okay, so the audience might wonder that you're a young guy.
Yeah,
you got into Ozzy way later, of course.
Yeah,
we should preface that with that information.
Yeah, this is like 2012, 2013 when this all happened, and I just remember like trying to learn everything I could from Randy Rhoads, and as that started happening, I joined a band with my dad, the Land of Oz, and that whole ball has since been rolling, and it's still going. And we just had rehearsal this morning, got a couple shows coming up, but while that was going on, I'll never forget my dad telling me, he said, you love Randy Rhoads, and Randy Rhoads is awesome, and he loves Randy Rhoads too. But he's like, one of these days you're going to start to get into Eddie Van Halen, and I was like, oh no. And then sure enough, I don't know what happened. I just started to love Van Halen, especially the older stuff, like the Van Halen 1, Van Halen 2 era. And then I was lucky enough to join a Van Halen tribute band. So it's kind of awesome because I get to play like my 2 favorite guitar players. And it's really hard for me to choose between them. But they both definitely mean a lot to me. And I love both of them a lot.
So let me ask you, if you had to choose between Van Halen 1 and Blizzard of Oz, what would you do?
I mean, if I had to choose between
into your head,
I would probably choose Van Halen 1, just because I think if there was no Van Halen 1, there wouldn't have been a Blizzard of Oz. There still would have been, but I don't think it would have been the same. Like Crazy Train, there would have been no tapping in the solo, etc. Like so many things that he had done just made a path for everyone else, including Randy Rhoads.
Yeah. I have to admit, knowing your background a little bit, and knowing that you started playing in Land of Oz and doing the Ozzy tribute, and knowing from when you were on the Sports and Metal podcast that you started learning Randy Rhoads when you learned to play guitar, I'm actually a little surprised to hear that. Where do you come in on this, Jay?
Oh man, why? Now you're putting me on the spot. It's so hard. I guess if I had to pick my choice would be Blizzard of Oz. I don't get me wrong. Like I said, it's so hard because, I mean, obviously Eddie Van Halen is the king. I mean, if we didn't have Eddie Van Halen, you probably wouldn't have had Randy Rhoads, like Matt said.
Yeah.
But I guess for me, personally, I just think that album overall to me is just a better album.
Yeah, no,
and and I don't know what it is about it. I think a lot of times with bands, I've seen this where, you know, so many times, you know, we look back and, you know, what the album that started it all, it has that raw, edgy feeling and that vibe going on. So for that reason, I think a lot of times, you know, obviously, you know, Van Halen 1 having Eruption on it, you know, that was just like out of this world. Never had heard anything like it, that kind of stuff. But to me, I always thought for Van Halen, their best album was the 1984 album. That's just me personally.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going Blizzard of Oz.
Well, I'm going to come in here. If I'm going to choose my favorite Van Halen album, it's going to be either the debut or 1984. I'm with you. 1984 is a fucking killer record, dude. Like Panama, the riff is insane. A lot of people were like turned off by the advent of the keyboards into the music, but I loved it. Eddie's a great musician across the board. He's a great keyboard player, but I mean, House of Pain, Girl Gone Bad. I mean, there's some stuff on 1984 that could have fit right in on the debut record. I mean, it has that vibe. But that being said, I mean, you have to give the edge to Van Halen 1 over even 1984, just because without that record, there is no 1984.
Yeah.
And same, I'm going to agree with Matt. Without Van Halen 1, there's no Blizzard of Oz. My thought on this is, anybody who knows me knows my favorite band is Guns N' Roses. But right there for me is Van Halen, AC/DC, Def Leppard. I have like a short list of bands that are like my favorites. Like you can fit them on one hand. But the thing is, if I were to compare debut records, I always say the two greatest debut records are Appetite for Destruction and or Van Halen 1. And debate comes down to those two. So, I mean, I could put Van Halen 1 in so many different debates and argue that it's the best in that debate. So when I'm coming to this debate, Van Halen 1 versus Blizzard of Oz, I can't possibly put Blizzard of Oz ahead of Van Halen 1 for the reasons you said and for the reasons I just said. I mean, the album changed the world. When people heard Eruption, like this is back when you might have a tape and you had headphones. Like, think about this. Think of Back to the Future. Matt, you saw Back to the Future?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Remember when Marty
I know you're
was
gonna say
1955 and he's trying to get his dad to have a crush on his mom so he could be born?
And he wakes
and
him up.
Remember he has that suit from Doc Brown when he goes back in the DeLorean. I remember he has the suit on and he sneaks into George McFly's house and he puts the headphones on him and he starts playing like Eruption. It says Van Halen on the tape.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, need I say more? It was like nobody had ever heard anything like that. It was from another planet. Like it was insane what he was doing. And then just as far as an album goes, I mean, the band, I mean, Michael Anthony's harmonies, Van Halen's drumming, and it's not to take anything away from the band Ozzy put together for Blizzard of Oz, but it's almost like comparing the band that Ozzy put together for Blizzard of Oz to me is almost like comparing it to like when David Lee Roth went solo and tried to put a super band together, which was a super band, don't get me wrong. But again, it was to emulate Van Halen.
Yeah.
Like the Even Smile Band with Steve Vai, Greg Bissonette, and those guys. It was a super duper all-star band. But again, Dave doesn't do that if he hadn't been in Van Halen. He knew that he had to put a band together to equal or match what he had in Van Halen. So it's the same thing. When Ozzy was kicked out of Sabbath, fired, and he was like at his wit's end in a hotel room, ready to drink himself to death, right? And Sharon Osbourne says, you can do this, you got it all. And she's trying to save his life, and she decides to become his manager. And you don't think Sharon Osbourne was saying to him, "You've got to find yourself an Eddie Van Halen"? Think about it. I mean, that's why I don't know if you know the background a little bit, but Dana Strum from Slaughter actually knew Randy Rhoads back in the LA Sunset Strip days, and he actually told Randy Rhoads to audition for Ozzy. Randy didn't want to do it. He was so loyal to Quiet Riot at the time. He didn't want to do it. And Randy Rhoads' mom said, "No, this could be your big break," because Quiet Riot couldn't get a record deal. That's why they signed that deal with Sony Japan, and their first two records were released in Japan, which made their first two records imports here, which is why Metal Health for Americans is like Quiet Riot's debut. So it was Randy Rhoads' mom that said, do the audition. This could be your big break, and the rest is history. But I digress. I mean, why? That's all happening because of what Van Halen did. Every blonde singer, every band that had a blonde lead singer on the Sunset Strip had that because David Lee Roth was the lead singer on Van Halen 1. Every band that came out of LA had that hotshot guitarist because Van Halen had that hotshot guitarist. Van Halen, Dave used to tell Eddie to play his solos on stage with his back facing the crowd so people couldn't rip him off. And that includes Randy Rhoads. I mean, I read a lot of stuff about that, like how Randy was involved in those days. And I will say this. I heard a lot of people say, you know, in Randy's defense that he didn't consider Eddie competition because he was so confident in his own playing. And that's awesome. So it's not a knock on Randy, but you just can't take away what Eddie meant to the period and what the album meant. And then, like Jay said, how it was raw. Back to my Appetite comparison. The reason I always think of Appetite and Van Halen is because I look at those two records as like they changed everything. Like when Van Halen came out, everything was 70s disco and heavy metal was kind of out, and there was the punk rock scene and the new wave scene. Van Halen was against the grain. They weren't supposed to blow up, but they did because they were so fucking good. You couldn't deny them.
Yeah, they came out like when the whole disco thing was
exactly, and they transcended the scene. Think about it. Van Halen 1 came out in 78. The other heavy metal bands that emulated Van Halen didn't even start breaking until the early 80s.
Yeah.
Quiet Riot was the first heavy metal band to go #1 on Billboard. That was 83. That's 5 years later. And again, I mean, Randy Rhoads was in that band. He left that band, to go with Ozzy. That worked out for both of those bands. I think Kevin DeBrow lucked out too because Kevin DeBrow was so into promoting Randy Rhoads that he wasn't promoting Quiet Riot. So I think that worked out for everybody, but that could be another show. But I just think you can't deny it, Van Halen's influence. They spawned an entire genre, whether you want to call it hair metal, butt rock, whatever. Even though Van Halen wasn't that, Van Halen didn't wear makeup. They didn't do all that, but every band that did got it from Van Halen, So that's where I'm at, Jay.
Well, let's. What do you think, Matt? I mean, I know, like I said, I think a lot of it sometimes comes down to, musical preference too. I mean, because if you want to debate what's a better record or what's the record that you like the most, because I would probably have to agree with you that if it's what's the best record or better record, obviously it would be Van Halen 1 because of that influence. But if you're asking me which one I prefer, I got to go with Blizzard. I mean, and maybe I'm sappy because I like ballads, but the ballad that Goodbye to Romance on Blizzard is like one of the best all-time ballads I've ever heard.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
I know you can't fault Van Halen for not having a ballad on the album per se, but I think that's part of the reason, that kind of part of what drew me to that record. I know sometimes, before, why don't we go track by track?
Well, hold on before we do that, because I know Matt's going to agree with me here. Van Halen didn't want a ballad on the record. One thing you could say about the entire David Lee Roth era of Van Halen is that they never did a ballad.
Yeah.
That's why there's the big rift between the Van Hagar set and the Van Halen set, because all the Van Halen guys are like, oh, we don't like that sappy pop Sammy Hagar shit. You know what I mean? Van Halen didn't do ballads. And I love it. He doesn't do ballads. They don't do it. They don't do it.
And maybe that's part of the other reason why I'm a Van Hagar guy. I mean, you know that we've had that discussions numerous times. I'm
breaking shots because I do love Goodbye to Romance. It's an amazing track.
Yeah, it really is.
Here's the thing. The records are definitely different. I mean, there's definitely a different style of playing on the Blizzard of Oz record. Randy brought that classical vibe.
Yeah.
So you could make so many arguments for Blizzard of Oz as far as elements that it has that the Van Halen record doesn't have. The keyboards, I mean, it has a lot more ambiance. the Blizzard of Oz record, think of the opening of Mr. Crowley, that whole keyboard intro.
Yeah.
It creates like an ambiance. You almost picture yourself in like Dracula's castle.
I think there was a lot more like thought put into the whole writing process of Blizzard of Oz too, but like because I think like
100%.
I mean, obviously I don't know, but I feel like the whole Van Halen thing, they kind of just jammed and just played and came up with stuff as they went. You know what I mean?
I agree.
You know, whatever sounded good, they went with. I think like because I'm sure you guys know, like Bob Daisley actually wrote a lot of that music, almost all the music on Blizzard of Oz.
Yep.
Wrote the lyrics and everything, and like that was pretty much. I mean, if you ask me, I feel like that was really his album. Him and the drummer Lee Kerslick that just passed away. They had a huge part in writing that record, and like not a lot of people know that. A lot of people think that it was Tommy Aldridge and Rudy Sarzo, but they were just the touring guys.
Yeah, they were just the touring guys, and then think in 2002, when Kerslake and what's his name? I'm drawing a blank, Matt.
Bob Daisley.
Yeah, Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake, they were suing Sharon over the royalties.
Yeah.
And Sharon had the records re-recorded with Rob Trujillo and Mike Borden.
Yeah.
To screw them out of the royalties. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of aura to the Blizzard of Oz record and the Diary of a Madman record. But you know what? That brings me to my next point. I don't know where you fall on this, Matt. I actually like Diary of a Madman better than Blizzard of Oz.
No, I do too. I think that Randy's guitar sound was a little bit better. I think he like kind of found himself after the writing of Blizzard. I mean, not to say Blizzard of Oz was a bad record because it was a killer record.
Oh,
I mean,
it's awesome.
I love every track on that record. But I think like stuff like Flying High Again, Tonight especially. I think Tonight was like probably that's my favorite song on Diary of a Madman.
I'm with you. I think Tonight might be one of my favorite Ozzy songs. Period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Songs like that though, just really I think really pushed them ahead at the time.
Yeah.
Because there was some groundbreaking stuff in Blizzard too.
Yeah.
To add a little selfish plug.
What's that, Jay?
No, I wanted to add a selfish little plug here for that point, Matt. Your cover of Tonight is the best one I've ever heard.
Thank you.
Yeah, check that out on YouTube with the Land of Oz doing Tonight.
I'll never forget. I taped that. When you were you were actually in a
rehearsing. Yeah,
you were in a rehearsal, and that was the first time I ever heard you play.
Well, Jay, why don't you tell everybody how old Matt was when you taped that?
Okay, so I was introduced to the band, and you guys invited me to the rehearsal studio, and they're telling me, they're like, oh, this guy Matt, he's 16 years old. So I'm going there and I'm expecting, I'm like, all right, this is going to be a good player, decent guitarist, but I'm not thinking like what I'm seeing, what I'm going to see. And then I go to this, rehearsal studio, interview the band, and then they're like, okay, well, why don't you come back and watch us play? And let me tell you, I was just blown away. I couldn't believe. I thought I was listening to Ozzy. First of all,
well, Matt becomes Randy Rhoads. I mean, it's that crazy.
And when I saw you perform Tonight, especially, I mean, let's face it, every track that you guys do is like, it sounds exactly like Ozzy. I mean, it does, like to every little detail, like the tones that you use. The drop, the band is fantastic. But anyway,
the rest of the players are just all
you guys are world class. I mean, and I'll put you guys up against any Ozzy tribute.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Van Halen Nation too.
Both bands. But I mean, we're just happen to be talking about this.
Yeah.
So that's why I brought it up. But you're particularly that performance of Tonight was like. I had goosebumps, man, when I heard it, and I still have the video. I know I've shared it with you, and I think I have it on YouTube. But
yeah. Another great one to check out. People could probably check it out on Amazon. Am I right, Matt? When Land of Oz, you guys did the acoustic version of Goodbye to Romance.
Yeah, that's on like Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, any like streaming platform. It's
phenomenal.
Check it out, everybody. Land of Oz, Goodbye to Romance.
And if you don't have any,
check out the video on YouTube so you can see Matt because it's unbelievable.
Thank you.
But back to the conversation at hand. Look, I'm not dogging on Blizzard. It's unbelievable, and I mean, Matt made a great point. I do think that the Van Halen record, it's not that it was thrown together or that they were making it up as they went along. It was that they were a young, hungry band. And
yeah,
and again,
it just sounded really natural to me.
What's that, Matt?
It just sounded like Van Halen 1 to me. I mean, all Van Halen stuff to me just sounds very natural. Like they just kind of like they don't really have to think about what they're doing. You know, they're just also.
You're nailing my point. You're nailing it. It's like you take a young, hungry band, like guys that are playing in backyard parties, right? And they want to make it. They're hungry. They're young and hungry. They want to make it. And they'll do anything to do that. And at that point, and not to mention, they have so many issues in their lives because they're young. They might be broke. They might have a drug problem. And this could be not just Van Halen, any young, hungry band. They have issues in their lives. So they have anger and they have angst and they might have parties that they can write about. The bottom line is they have so much they can write about. It just comes naturally because they're young and hungry. And that stuff manifests itself on those on a band's debut record usually. That's what makes Appetite for Destruction to me so great. You know, you listen to Night Train, it was about Guns N' Roses, 5 guys living broke in a one-room apartment, and they couldn't afford anything to eat, so they'd only eat like whatever the groupies brought them on the Sunset Strip, and they would get drunk on Night Train. It was $1 a bottle, cheap wine, Night Train. So, you know, that's why loaded like a freight train, flying like an airplane. You know, they're drunk on fucking Night Train. When I was fucking 10 years old, I thought they were singing about an actual train. Who knew? But anyway, bottom line is, you see where I'm going. The songs were autobiographical, and when you listen to Van Halen 1, it's the same thing. It's like autobiographical. It's like it's young, it's hungry. This was Eddie wanking off for all intents and purposes. You know, showing what he could do because nobody else was doing it. And it was Dave and all his swag, you know. Oh yeah, I'll fuck your girlfriend, you know, Diamond Dave. You know, what he was doing in the backyard parties in Pasadena. It was all captured on that debut record. And you know, that's why when Gene Simmons went to LA he actually went to see a band called The Boys, which I think had Mick Brown, who was later in Dokken, in it. Maybe George Lynch was in it. I don't remember. But when Gene Simmons went out to LA, I think it was at the Starwood, he went to see another band. Van Halen was opening. But he never saw the headliner because he saw Van Halen and he said, "This is the band." And he recorded the demo with them. And you ever hear that demo, Matt? The Gene Simmons demo?
The Zero demo.
Awesome. It's really cool. You hear an early version of "She's the Woman" on there.
Yeah, that and like House of Pain. Yeah, a lot of stuff on the new album too that came out like 10 years ago. Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. "She's the Woman" was on A Different Kind of Truth. Yeah. But that's what I mean. Like that's why Van Halen had so much holdover stuff that they put on A Different Kind of Truth back in like 2012, because bands tend to write so much when they're young and hungry. So that's what Van Halen 1 encapsulated. The difference between that and Blizzard of Oz, and like you said, Matt, there was so much more thought to the songwriting of Blizzard of Oz because it was like a conscious effort to write these songs. Like Sharon Osbourne said, "We're going to resurrect your career. We're going to get you the hotshot guitarist, and we're going to bring in songwriters." And that's the difference. It's not a knock on Blizzard of Oz because it's great. It's unbelievable. But it doesn't encapsulate that rawness that Van Halen 1 encapsulates of a young, hungry band. Blizzard of Oz is like Ozzy coming back from the dead. It's just not as raw to me. That's just my opinion. And it's one of the reasons I would go toward Van Halen 1. I'll admit to you, sometimes I could be sick of Van Halen 1 and actually want to hear Blizzard of Oz. And sometimes I could be sick of Blizzard of Oz and want to hear Van Halen. I can go back and forth because I love them both. But I just, again, I got to go Van Halen for those reasons, you know?
How about you, Matt?
To me, it's just like what he was just saying. I feel like the whole Van Halen thing was that they formed themselves when they were young, and it was just, I feel like everything that they wrote about was just very natural. Like it didn't really take much thought, I feel like. And if you listen to the lyrics too, like a lot of the stuff they wrote about was just about like going to the beach and like having fun and like beautiful girls, and you know what I mean? It was just like there was no like worry or anything in their music. It was all about having a great time and having fun. And I feel like that's kind of why they sounded the way they did.
Yeah, no pretentiousness. It was just young kids growing up in Pasadena, beach kids, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And I feel like,
I agree.
Blizzard of Oz, it was just, there was so much more thought, like I said, just put into all the, I mean, I'm not saying it was a bad thing because like,
No, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, that whole album is unbelievable, but I think there was just so much more thought and time put into the writing process of Blizzard of Oz.
When it comes to two records like this, it's like choosing your favorite finger.
Yeah, and I got that. But see, here's where I got to come in and say, by you guys both saying that, I think that's what makes that record a better record because there was more thought put into it.
Yeah.
And for me, I guess maybe I'm drawn to that classical style and the elements that are in Blizzard of Oz more than the elements in Van Halen 1. And that's not to say, like I said, obviously Eddie Van Halen cannot be replicated, nor will he ever. I mean, he's probably I do my own. I'm a big list guy. Aaron's really not, but we kind of debate back and forth sometimes. But we can both agree that Eddie Van Halen belongs. I had him second to Jimi Hendrix as all-time greatest guitarist. And the only reason Jimi Hendrix I had over him is because Jimi Hendrix kind of, if we didn't have Jimi Hendrix, we wouldn't have had
Jimi Hendrix was the Eddie Van Halen of his time.
Right.
Yeah.
So my point is that Eddie Van Halen is the king when it comes to that. However, I just think maybe those styles and elements like that you had stated that are different, that are on the Blizzard of Oz record, I think I'm just drawn to that more. Like, I love that classical style. And I just think when I listen to the record, I also sometimes, for me personally, it's always, a lot of it is about the vibe that it gives off. And when I listen to songs like, Mr. Crowley, I just get goosebumps. Like, just the sound of that song, it's got that darker kind of tone. I think the Van Halen, I agree with Aaron. Like, the Van Halen 1 album was more like, kind of, they were capturing what they were about as a band, and they were finding themselves, and they kind of had that young, attitude, and you hit it on the head. It was a raw record, which, once again, Appetite for Destruction, the best Guns N' Roses album, obviously, because it was raw. But I just think for me, it's those elements that are on Blizzard of Oz that attracts me to that record. And I think the fact that there was more time and effort put into, the recording process and, like you said, the writing process, I think that's what makes it overall a better record for me. And
it's a fair point.
And there's a track on that record that I never hear anybody talk about. Track 10. You looking at me, looking at you.
Oh yeah, the bonus track.
Oh, that was on the re-release in 2002, right, Matt?
But for me, a lot of times I still look at those kind of tracks as being part of the album, even though it wasn't released at that time. Mm-hmm. But it was recorded during that time. And when I hear that song, I'm like, man, that's a song that could very arguably be one of the best songs on that album that had been released.
Well, I'll tell you another song that I really love that never got a studio recording. You said it all.
Oh, yeah. I think that's, to me at least, I think that's my favorite, like as a song-wise, like the vibe of it and everything, I think that's my favorite. Besides Tonight, that's probably my favorite Ozzy song, and nobody knows.
Matt, I'm with you. We got a lot in common, bro. I think you said it all is unbelievable. I don't know why it never got its studio.
You know the story behind that, too? Like how they wrote that?
I know that Jet Records wanted a single quick, and I think Lee Kerslake sang the vocal melody on that.
So they were out playing a show somewhere, and like they had like the record company reps there, and they said they wanted to record a live like track to put out before the album came out. So they were like, what do you want us to put out? And they're like, we don't want you to do anything that's going to be on the album. And they're like, we don't have anything else. And they were like, well, can you guys come up with something? And they actually wrote that. Like they did sound check, and then like Bob Daisley came up with the melody on bass, and Randy just jumped in and started playing, and like that's kind of like what I was saying with the whole Van Halen thing. It actually kind of felt like it was like just natural, and that's what
I agree.
And then Ozzy just wrote down some quick lyrics with Bob, and then they just recorded it right then and there at soundcheck, and then later they went into the studio and put in like the audience sound and everything. But they wrote that.
Okay. And I actually had read that when they originally recorded that Ozzy was actually like passed out, and I think like Bob Daisley or Lee Kirst like came up with the vocal melody and then showed it to Ozzy, and maybe he put the lyrics to it. I don't know. But anyway, that's like all natural, like just coming up with it.
Yeah.
And Jay, that's the difference between my taste and your taste. I think in general, I tend to gravitate toward raw records like that. I'm even more of like a little bit of a punk rock guy for that reason. You know, I love like Social Distortion. I love the first Skid Row record. That record was real raw to me. I always gravitate more toward raw, punchy rock and roll records versus like I like Maiden, but I'm not the biggest Iron Maiden fan. To me, it's too theatrical. You know. But that's just our differences of taste. Because here's the thing: I love Ozzy as much as anybody, Jay. You know, Ozzy's like in my short list. Remember we talked about my short list? It's Ozzy, Guns, Van Halen, Def Leppard, Sabbath. But like, I agree with. I could see how we could differentiate on these records because Blizzard of Oz does gravitate toward that theatrical vibe a little bit more than Van Halen 1 does, which to me is more of like almost like a punk record. It's almost like it's not a punk record, but you know what I mean? 3-minute catchy, punchy songs.
Yeah.
You know, it's to the point. It's not 6-minute epic songs. And I was going to say something. I kind of drew a blank. What were you going to say, Jay?
Well, no, I think that's what makes this a great debate because they're both phenomenal records, and it really is hard to choose, and that's why I said there's probably a difference between which one is the better record and which one do I prefer. Because like I said, if you didn't have Van Halen 1, like Matt said too, and like you said, you had Blizzard of Oz. So for that reason, yes. I mean, Van Halen probably takes the cake. But once again, like Blizzard of Oz to me, you know, just so many great tracks, just as many great tracks as Van Halen 1. Like we didn't even mention Revelation, Mother Earth.
Oh yeah, that's like that's
like the masterpiece for me.
I feel like
from top to bottom.
As a band, playing in the Ozzy tribute band, I think the two songs that I respect the most are Diary of a Madman, and Diary of a Madman Tonight and Revelation. I've never heard another band. I'm not saying that we do it the best, but like I've never heard a band actually pull that off to the point where I was like, that I've watched and I'm like, wow, that sounded good because there's so much going on. You got the Don Airey and all the keys. There's that entire long, piano solo right before Randy comes in with the solo, and I've never heard somebody else. I mean, our keyboard player Viv just kills that, and it just blows my mind.
Yeah, you guys are unbelievable.
He's an amazing keyboard. Every member of your band is amazing, and and audience, if you haven't checked them out, hopefully with COVID ending here or soon to be ending, and bands getting back out, you need to get that. It's a must-see band. The Land of Oz.
Yeah.
So
anyway, you guys make a great point too. It's the hit songs that are usually the ones that are the ones you want to least hear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, they're just overplayed.
They're so overplayed, and they're just not usually
Train.
Yeah.
Crazy Train gets played a lot. Like we talked about it the other day. Like you'll hear Crazy Train at a lot of sporting events. They always play like the hit songs, but for me, it's always those songs that aren't discussed that kind of just blow my mind. And Revelation, you don't hear that a lot on the radio. You might hear it on Boneyard, but you don't hear it on like mainstream radio.
Yeah.
To me, that song is like the epitome of that record.
Yeah. And I also feel like Blizzard of Oz in its own sense, in a guitar sense too, but I feel like in the sense of just metal as a genre, I think that Blizzard of Oz really had a lot to play with for what happened after that. When Van Halen,
both of these records did.
What happened specifically for guitar, I feel like Blizzard of Oz had a big role in what happened after for metal, at least.
I agree. And since we're talking about deeper tracks, I'm going to go out on a limb and say my favorite song on Van Halen 1. It's not the deepest of tracks because I heard it on the radio, but I'm the One.
That's mine too.
Dude, unbelievable. And the harmony in the middle,
Oh, yeah.
Definitely does not get the credit it deserves.
Oh yeah,
no.
I mean, there's that double bass shuffle that he did on like Hot for Teacher. He like back on the first record, you know.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
That's the other thing too. Those guys, they were really good at like swinging, you know, like not like I've never heard guitar players like, I mean, including myself, I've never heard somebody get that shuffle that Eddie gets on "I'm the One" like Eddie did.
That's a great point. I mean, yeah, it definitely that shuffle. Yep.
It's so hard, and it just came so natural to him. If you listen to like the isolated guitar track, you can tell there's no effort to it. He's just playing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Matt. So I guess obviously I'm gonna go out here. I'm gonna just I gotta go Van Halen 1 if I have to choose between the two. It's not that I don't love them both, but I gotta go Van Halen 1 if I'm making a choice. Are you sticking with your choice, Matt?
Yeah, I would probably go Van Halen 1 too. Just as a guitar player, I feel like.
Yeah. And Jay, you're gonna go Blizzard.
Groundbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I said, it's either or. It's a toss up, but yeah, I have to be the odd man out, and obviously 2-1 wins. But both great records. I mean, just to throw it out there, I actually like Ice Cream Man.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great song, but it's a cover.
I know, but
that's Van Halen having fun. That's just Van Halen having fun. I got to say this, Jay, but that also just sums up like how cool Van Halen was. Like Dave was the guy that every dude wanted to be him and every girl wanted to be with him. So when we're talking about the records, obviously we can talk about the guitar players all day. When we're talking about these albums, you can't discredit what David Lee Roth meant to the genre and to rock and roll in general in 1978. Like I said, he was the coolest dude going, man. He was it. And the way he played with that song, and he's like, "Summertime come, baby, need something to keep you cool." You know, he was just so sexy. You know what I mean? I don't know how to say it, but he was the man. He was the man.
And I'm not discounting, David Lee Roth and what he meant to music, but there's probably no other character out there like Ozzy when it comes to that.
So, but you know what?
Wait,
I'm going to end it like this. I'm going to end it. Hold on.
I'm not ending yet. We're not done yet.
No. I'm just going to drop a bomb on you, I mean. To your point. Dude, as great as Ozzy is, and I love him, when it was like 1977 and Van Halen, or 78, I should say, sorry, and Van Halen was opening for Black Sabbath will tell you that Van Halen was blowing them off the stage.
Yeah.
That's what
I've heard that.
In rock and roll history.
And that's fine, but my point is that Ozzy Osbourne.
No, I'm not dissing Ozzy. You know I love
Ozzy Osbourne. You can't discredit him being in that band because
we're in a courtroom, so I got to take all the points I can get.
I got it, but I
got to take what I can get.
But I'm using that.
Ozzy's the man. Don't get me wrong.
Wait a second. I'm outnumbered here, so I had to throw the wild card out there. So I had to use Ozzy, and obviously, if you want to say who the better frontman is overall, obviously, I mean, David's. I think. Look, wait. I think
taking fingers again. Which one do you want to cut off?
Yeah, I think you can make the argument because once again, this is why me and you are two different, obviously, and that's why opinions are what they are.
Hey, you're talking about two of my favorites.
Wait.
I can't.
But it's funny. But there's something funny here because I personally enjoy Dio Sabbath better than Ozzy Sabbath.
I do too.
And I enjoy Sammy Hagar Van Halen better than I enjoy David Van Halen. And the reason for that for me is that Sammy Hagar and Dio are elite vocalists with their voice. Whereas to me, I think if you wanted to say who's the better stage men and better entertainers, then hell yeah, it's Ozzy and Dave.
I'm not going to lie. As much as I'm a Dave guy, I think in latter years, I've gained so much more respect for Sammy Hagar. I mean, he still can sing the way he did 30 years ago. The guy's unbelievable. And if you could see one of his shows with like the Wabos or something, he's a great entertainer. I mean, his concerts now are basically like heavy metal Jimmy Buffett concerts. Like it's like a beach party. Yeah. You know, and he's got Cabo Wabo Cantina, tequila. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. I love Van Hagar, and I've gained more respect for Sammy in later years. And Dave, I actually think, kind of lost it. You know,
yeah, he fell off the deep end.
It seems like he should be hosting a game show.
Yeah,
for Van Halen. But the bottom line is, we're talking about these records, and just to your other point, I can't agree with you guys. This could be another show. Maybe we'll have you back, Matt. We'll do the Ozzy Dio versus Sabbath Dio debate because I'm going out all day and twice on Sunday. But that's just me. I'll save my debate for when we do that show. We're not going to get into it now. All right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's fun. It's a fun, you know.
And we could do a whole other show on it, so I don't want to waste it now.
Well, we're going to have Steve Desco on that show. I think we'll bring Steve and Matt. I'd like to bring Steve and Matt. How about that?
Yeah, that would be cool.
We'll have both of you.
Yeah,
anyway, guys,
I would have to go Dio Sabbath just because the tracks like Walk Away and Heaven and Hell, and like there's just so many, you know, just deep cuts.
Great tracks. But when you're talking about the just the girth of the Ozzy Sabbath catalog.
No, yeah.
I mean, what's there? And the one thing about the Ozzy Sabbath, see, I didn't want to do it, but I'll just do it a little bit. I could just zone out to Ozzy Sabbath for like 6 hours. I could sleep to Ozzy Sabbath. It could put me to sleep because it's so.
Well, it sounds so much different than Dio Sabbath. Like just
it's much more ethereal. The Ozzy Sabbath is much more ethereal and psychedelic.
Mm-hmm.
There's Pink Floyd elements. There's prog rock elements. As much as there's heavy metal, you listen to the early Sabbath, like, you know, Master of Reality, Paranoid, it's definitely rooted in heavy metal, the origins of heavy metal. But when you start getting into the Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, Sabotage stuff, it's almost like prog rock.
Yeah.
But it's not like boring prog rock, because I'm not a big prog rock guy. It's not like Genesis. It's still like rooted in heavy metal, but it just takes you on such a journey that to me the Dio Sabbath overall didn't. Heaven and Hell, don't get me wrong. I mean, you could put Heaven and Hell up against pretty much any Ozzy Sabbath track.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that good. But I mean, when we're talking about a whole, that's all I'm going to say, because now that's a whole other show.
Well, no, and it's the perfect show because now I just figured it out. It's going to be Matt and me versus you and Steve.
I don't know where Steve stands on it, so I guess we'll figure it out.
I'm sure he stands with Ozzy.
I mean, I don't know. He does another tribute live. The Dio Sabbath.
He does the Dio tribute. I know that.
Yeah, so we might outnumber you 3-1 on that one.
I don't know, but
we don't know. That's why we're going to save it. So,
well, anyway, in this courtroom, obviously, we've all said our piece. We've all made our case, and I mean, obviously, majority rules. So I think we're in agreement that Van Halen 1 is the better record, but we love them all. So
yes, and we'd be interested to hear what everybody else out there says. We'll put a poll up on Twitter. I think that's a great thing, and hopefully everybody checks the episode out. Matt, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime. It's been a great show. And as always, the gavel will rock. Rock on.
Peace out.
Thanks for listening to And the Gavel Will Rock with Jason Voorhees and Aaron Savage.
Ooh, yeah!
Tune in next week when 2 more iconic albums stand trial. Got a request? Like us on Facebook and hit us up on Twitter at Gavel Will Rock, or email us at andthegavelwillrock@gmail.com.